Fuad Alakbarov, the human rights activist, says the austerity choice was made long ago by British government, that inequality is a price worth paying for growth.
Hello, and welcome to the show. Colourful conversations with clergyman Pete and businessman Mark. This week we debate, we need more austerity. Well, why do we bring this subject up? Well, Philip Hammond, the UK Chancellor, has declared in his budget saying that austerity was coming to an end. But this has been challenged by many politicians who have rejected his claims, saying more welfare cuts were coming and spending was still being squeezed. Well, in fact, Prime Minister Theresa May said bringing austerity to an end was not just more about putting money into public services, it was more about money in people's pockets as well. But are people seeing money in their pockets? In fact, what is happening to society? And really, are some of the government measures really helping people who need it most? Here's a little point of thought. A tale of two cities. When one side of the city savours prosperity and is flush on all financial flanks, how can the other endure austerity and rely on local food banks? Those on Easy Street may have the temerity to scoff as their status outranks. Should those on Skid Row suffer severity and swallow hardship with thanks? As poverty persists for all posterity, when the empty charity box clanks, the long road to ruin in all sincerity is drawing universal credit blanks. Yes, Theresa May, maybe universal credit rollout isn't going so well. So, Clergyman Pete, I will ask you, do you think that we are a divided nation and maybe a fail of two cities as I described, where actually the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer?
I would say not enough. I think that the problem is not so much that the poor are getting poorer. That is a problem. It's an issue that I'm not happy with. But the issue that I take with the description of poor getting poorer, rich getting richer, is there aren't enough people getting richer. That's basically my point. And that can only happen if you allow for more freedom for entrepreneurs. You need a strong government, you need easy access to credit, and you need there to be less expenditure on things like tax. And this tax is a huge burden on the economy. And if we could reduce it, if we could reduce it significantly, if we could do that by significantly reducing payout into the social security payments to people who are not in work, and also things such as healthcare and education. If we could cut out those three other major expenditures by the government, then you would have real austerity. But I believe you would free up the economy.
Yes, now, you see, this is the interesting thing, because Mr. Hammond chose to spend a windfall, so he claims, from better tax receipts on the NHS, universal credit, and income tax cuts. So it is true, he has done some things.
Yes,
But one thing that many people say is that certainly he hasn't given enough to the NHS, but probably one of the things that's happened is the controversial rollout of the universal credit, where perhaps it hasn't gone very well. People haven't got the money where they should be getting money. Those who are getting the money shouldn't be getting the money, and many other issues such as that. People perhaps at a certain area of society have become too reliant, maybe, on the welfare state, and whereas others who genuinely need it are just not getting it. And so I think that the problem here is as a society, we're not managing ourselves very well. And coming back to the point about austerity, our point maybe is that when people talk about austerity, the country is still in massive debt.
Yes.
And that's the thing. So surely, actually, the policy hasn't really worked, because on the one hand, how can a nation such as the United Kingdom progress if it's having to constantly pay back such a huge debt? And yet we've got crumbling NHS service, we've got crumbling infrastructure. Something's not going right, is it?
There were a few issues there that you raised which are just huge. Like, why do we have a publicly funded NHS when, if you look at any sort of major project and you think, either I'm going to get a private company to come and do this, or if I want it done really badly, I'll get the government to do it for me. I mean, the government-run projects are just rubbish. I mean, there's pressures and reasons for that, and one of them is the profit motive. But it's not the reasons for it are not important. The fact is that is what we find. We need also not to be making huge payments out in tax so that we can pay off the debt, as you pointed out, but also so that we can free up businesses to thrive. Because paying out huge amounts in tax just makes it so difficult. Running a small company myself, it's just so annoying having to pay such huge amounts of tax. And yes, there is a part of the tax paid by the employer. So, for income tax, not just the corporate tax itself. And so, yes, it's a problem that poor people are getting poorer, if that's what the statistics show. Although, there are problems with the definition of what you mean by poverty. But if we're going to have a change in that, if people are going to stop being poor, you need to have a source of wealth. And and wealth doesn't mean just printing more money. Well, it can mean that in the short term. What it means is things that are worth something being made. So it means industry, manufacturing, another, creation of intellectual property, like the Mark and Pete show. But, things where work is put in and you achieve something that's worth something, and then people pay for it, etc., etc. This is needed. And so people who are doing the stuff, businesses that are successful, need to be rewarded.
Although he has actually given relief, particularly on business rates, but some people say again it's just not enough.
No, my point is, my point that I would make is that we've not really had enough austerity. I think that's a move in the right direction. Absolutely, a Conservative Chancellor would be expected to do that. He should go further. But what I would say is not just a little bit further, a lot further. He paid out some, money. You say he had a windfall. Well. Paying money, throwing money into the endless pit of the NHS is not the answer. It is the answer if you want to buy some votes, but it's not, to be slightly cynical for a moment, but the answer for the future of the country is to have a real tight rein on any expenditure. In fact, to cut it properly. That's what I see as austerity. To cut it to such an amount that from the income tax levels that you have, you can pay off the debt within a few years. And when you've done that, you cut the taxes. That's real austerity. And once we've removed that debt, have a real stringent policy of not allowing unsecured loans, get Britain back, British individuals back out of debt. Let's get out of debt. That's not the way we're meant to be running a society. Now, of course, I'm basing this on the biblical principle of not running societies on debt and interest payments crippling you. So, and although that's the case, I think whether or not you take the Bible as being holy writ, we can see that it's wise because it's long term. It's going to enable you to be freed in and have access to capital in order to invest, to grow to grow. Well, to set up your own business if we're talking about individuals, but to have businesses grow if you're talking about a country as a whole. Let's bring on the austerity. Austerity Britain for the win.
Well, I must admit that one of the challenges is that some people will argue that actually we haven't been austere enough. I mean, the fact is the criticism by many quarters, politicians and many other in society, is that actually we've had it too good. In the sense that the NHS has been a good service. It is a good service, there's no doubt. But perhaps in some areas, they're putting the money in the wrong places. So it needs it at the frontline services, there's no doubt about that. So you raised the point about the NHS and perhaps your comment about maybe the money isn't going in the right way. But I do think that there is a need for a further investment in the NHS, but certainly not for those big fat cats who run it. And really where I think is needed is at the front line with nurses and doctors and equipment, not necessarily for those administrators who perhaps seem to be earning, six-figure sums that perhaps, maybe should be spent elsewhere. And similarly, again, what we've seen is that there has been some austerity, as we've seen, because there hasn't been enough investment in our infrastructure. Everybody knows and everybody complains about potholes around the country. Well, unfortunately, what we're seeing is that it's not enough. There are too many now. So the 400 odd million that he's going to be spending on, pouring money literally into the ground, actually isn't enough. And yet, we need a thriving infrastructure to make sure that, that businesses can get about, easily and safely. And I just think that it just seems as though we've got our values in the wrong area. And the one thing that annoys me more than anything is, shouldn't we actually sort of say to other nations, austerity isn't just at our own doorstep. It also goes on foreign policy. Yeah. Why is it that we're putting so much money into other people's pockets with the aid, the foreign aid? I'm not saying that we shouldn't help, but I come back to the point that we've made many, many times. If we don't get our own home domestic affairs sorted out, then we're never going to be effective enough to help others. We are literally spending billions, decade after decade, giving aid elsewhere. But we are seeing the crumbling services in the NHS, education, and many other areas. And so austerity, I think, is something to be shared. So maybe we should actually take a different view on austerity, and it's not just a domestic point.
Yes, I think that it should be a fundamental principle of the way that you run your affairs, that you give away, that you give away to help, that there's a charitable idea. Now, there are 2 points about the government giving. One is when the government of a country gives, it in general gives other people's money. Now, there are, it's not true to say that the government has no money of its own. That's a bit of an exaggeration, because it will own some land and properties, and it will make money from that. That's fair enough. But almost all the money comes from taxation, coming from the people. So it's giving away money that doesn't belong to it. And, that's easy to do, give away other people's money.
Of course.
But the Bible has a particular principle there that you should not give out of what you don't have. You give out of what you have, and then you give cheerfully, not under compulsion. So this is from 2 Corinthians chapter 9. Now, the principle here is simple. First, well, if you don't have it, you can't give it, and you shouldn't be upset about that. If God has given you enough, so if you have enough and more than enough, give away. You should give, but give because you want to. You're not going to be forced to. You should give, but you're not going to be forced to. And I think that this is where charitable giving has the upper hand. So I think it would be good if we were to return to the way of operating where it is independent, non-governmental bodies which give to charitable causes, including those abroad. Now, the amount that charities give now, although they are large amounts, some charities are like big, huge, megalithic companies, but then it's nothing compared with what a country or a national government can give. But that could change back again if the government pulled out. They should not be giving away money because they don't have it; they're in debt. And secondly, it's not their place to do it because it's not their money. They should be giving away. They should leave that to charitable causes where people give in specifically for that purpose.
Well, there is another point that I want to raise about austerity, and that is that many people have complained that as a result of some of the measures put in by the government and the way the society has gone, is such that, as we sort of alluded to at the beginning of the show, that some communities just simply can't cope anymore because they claim that the austerity measures are such that food banks, for example, can no longer cope. Places in England, Scotland, Wales, and many other areas of the United Kingdom are struggling. And charity, certainly in local communities, is extremely important. We've always talked about localism. However, what we're saying is that some people have got themselves into an awful lot of debt. And so somebody's living a life of Riley here. So on the one hand, on average, and I appreciate that no individual is exactly the same and no family setup is exactly the same, but why is it on average that people have debt of around £14,000? Something's gone wrong here. Usually you would have a debt because you bought things that you don't need. Now, what's happening here, which I would like to sort of explore a little bit more. So on the one hand, people are saying that there's too many austere measures that have been put in by the government in recent times, and yet people are driving around in their big 4x4s, they're going on holiday frequently, and they're enjoying their luxuries. And not only have we talked about the country having debt, individuals have got a lot of debt. So collectively, it's not a good picture, is it? So to this point about do we need more austerity measures, is there something that needs to be done there where people need to reevaluate what they're spending?
Yes. Yeah, I think that, well, no, spending is a big issue because when people are trying to sort out their own lives or sort out a budget, or whether a country is trying to sort out a budget, the levels of spending need to be in line with your income. So again, it's a question of we need austerity, in order to set us on the right path. When people talk about the lack of austerity and inequality, what they're really doing is looking at current outcomes. What we want to look at is what's right for the future. You want to put in place a successful, healthy economy, a healthy country, a healthy way of living, and instead people just looking at current outcomes. So to put it simply, it's like being a little child and thinking that you've been given some seeds to plant, and maybe it's a present, and there's a little pot to put them in, and grandparents lovingly come round a few months later to see the plants that you've grown, and you ate the seeds.
Yes.
It's exactly,
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's exactly what happened to me years ago, and I have to look. That's what we're doing, folks, by complaining about austerity. Just grow up.
Yeah, well, interestingly, according to the Resolution Foundation, the richest 10% of households will benefit from most of these income tax changes by the Chancellor. Now, whether that's true or not is all around the numbers game. But listeners, what do you think? Do you think that austerity is over? Maybe you've got a different view. Maybe you actually think, well, actually, we're doing fine. Well, why not let us know? Why don't you log on to markandpete.com and let us know your story? Well, join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.